Hello everyone. Today we're going to explore an interesting perspective on finances from the Bible, specifically Deuteronomy 17:14-20. This passage, nestled deeply in the Old Testament, provides profound insights on leadership, particularly on the pitfalls of arrogance and greed. It's fascinating how these ancient words, penned thousands of years ago, can still resonate in our modern world, especially in the realm of personal finance. The principles outlined in these verses can serve as a compass, guiding us to make wise, ethical, and sustainable financial decisions. They remind us that leadership, whether in a nation or our own personal finances, should not be driven by self-interest, but by a vision of service, humility, and respect for ethical boundaries. So let's delve into these verses and see what they have to teach us about avoiding the pitfalls of arrogance and greed in our financial lives. As we navigate through these verses, we'll discover how ancient wisdom can guide modern financial decisions. The scripture starts with a command to choose a king whom the Lord chooses. This isn't just about royal selection in ancient times, but a principle that can be applied to how we approach leadership today. Whether it's a CEO at the helm of a corporation, a president leading a country, or simply an individual managing their personal finances, the principle remains the same. Leaders should be chosen wisely, with discernment and consideration. The scripture's emphasis is on leaders who aren't driven by personal gain, but by the welfare of those they lead. In a financial context, this means leaders who make decisions that benefit all stakeholders, not just their personal coffers. It's about leaders who understand that their choices have far-reaching consequences and who take that responsibility seriously. But why is this so important? Well, let's think about the potential repercussions of choosing leaders who are driven by greed or arrogance. In a corporate setting, this could lead to unethical business practices, financial instability, and ultimately, the downfall of the organization. On a societal level, such leaders could cause economic disparity, social unrest, and a culture of corruption. Even when it comes to individual financial management, the principle holds true. If we allow greed or arrogance to guide our financial decisions, we might end up with unsustainable debt, strained relationships, and a life centered around materialism, rather than purpose and fulfillment. So whether it's a king in ancient times or a modern-day leader, the consequences of choosing leaders driven by personal gain can be disastrous. But on the flip side, leaders who prioritize the welfare of others, who make decisions based on wisdom and integrity, can lead societies, organizations, and individuals to prosperity and peace. Remember, leadership isn't just about authority and power. It's about responsibility, humility, and the courage to make tough decisions for the greater good. This is a principle we can all apply in our lives, whether we're leading a multinational corporation, a small family business, or simply managing our personal finances. So, the choice of leadership, be it in society or our personal finances, plays a crucial role. The scripture sets specific financial restrictions for the appointed king. These restrictions are not just arbitrary rules imposed on a king, but a blueprint designed to curtail arrogance, greed, and avarice. Let's delve into these restrictions and their implications. Firstly, the king is prohibited from accumulating a large number of horses. In ancient times, horses were synonymous with military might and wealth. This restriction, therefore, is a caution against excessive militarism and the pursuit of power. In modern times, this could be likened to our obsession with accumulating possessions as a show of status or power. The lesson here is to resist the urge to amass wealth or assets simply for the sake of appearing powerful or influential. Secondly, the king is warned against taking many wives. This, again, was a common practice among kings to form political alliances and demonstrate wealth. However, the scripture warns that this could lead the king's heart astray. Translating this to a contemporary context, it might be equated to forming relationships or alliances based solely on financial gain. The caution here is to avoid letting the pursuit of wealth dictate our relationships and alliances. Lastly, the king is instructed not to accumulate excessive wealth. Now, this is a clear and direct warning against greed and materialism. It's easy to get caught in the cycle of wanting more, especially in today's consumerist society. But unchecked accumulation of wealth can lead to arrogance, a disconnect from reality, and ultimately, a departure from ethical practices. So, what's the takeaway here? Well, these restrictions serve as a reminder of the dangers of unchecked accumulation, whether it's wealth, power, or relationships. They caution against letting materialistic desires dictate our actions and decisions. They call us to live within our means, prioritize ethical practices, and maintain a sense of humility, even in positions of power. Clearly, unchecked accumulation, even for a king, is discouraged. The principles outlined thousands of years ago in these biblical verses remain relevant today, guiding us towards a balanced and ethical approach to personal finance and leadership. The king was not just to rule but also to write and meditate on the law. This is a profound statement that carries deep wisdom. Just as the king was instructed to write and meditate on the law, we too should take time to deeply understand and reflect on the principles that guide our financial decisions. We live in a world where financial success is often measured by material wealth. But the ancient text of Deuteronomy challenges this notion by emphasizing the importance of a moral and ethical foundation. It tells us that the king, despite his power and wealth, was not above the law, but rather was to be immersed in it. This principle applies to us today, especially in our financial affairs. Just as the king was cautioned against considering himself better than his brethren, we too should be wary of arrogance. Arrogance can easily creep into our lives, particularly when we experience financial success. It can lead to a false sense of superiority and a disregard for ethical practices. This is a dangerous path which can lead to unethical decisions and ultimately financial ruin. In the realm of personal finance, this could mean engaging in unfair business practices, exploiting others for personal gain, or making financial decisions that harm the environment. These practices may seem beneficial in the short term, but they are unsustainable and can lead to devastating consequences. Instead, we should strive to make financial decisions that are not only beneficial to us, but also fair and ethical. This includes being honest in our business dealings, paying our employees fairly, and investing in companies that uphold ethical practices. Remember, true prosperity is not just about accumulating wealth. It's about creating a legacy of integrity and respect. It's about making decisions that we can be proud of and that contribute positively to our community. In the world of finance, it's easy to get lost in the numbers and forget about the human element. But at the end of the day, it's not just about how much money we make, but how we make it. Thus, ethical grounding is essential in all aspects of life, including our finances. In the next scene, we'll explore how these principles can be applied to personal finances. So, how can we apply these principles to our personal finances? It's all about balance and humility. You see, just like the appointed king, we too need to exercise restraint in our pursuit of wealth. Accumulating riches for the sake of it, or to inflate our social standing, mirrors the king's prohibited hoarding of horses, wives, and excessive wealth. Instead, we should be focusing on ethical financial practices. This means living within our means, avoiding the temptation to fall into debt for unnecessary luxuries, and not using money as a measure of our worth. It's about making sound financial decisions that are not driven by greed or the desire for ostentatious displays of wealth. Consider this. Next time you're about to make a financial decision, take a moment. Reflect on whether this choice is driven by necessity, by a genuine desire, or simply by greed. In essence, our financial decisions should be guided by humility and ethics, not greed. The scripture ends with a promise of long-lasting prosperity for those who follow these principles. This isn't about a quick cash grab or a fleeting taste of wealth. It's about enduring success, a prosperity that stands the test of time. And it all boils down to ethical financial practices. Imagine a tree. A tree that grows quickly, but with shallow roots, is vulnerable to the slightest storm. But a tree that takes time to grow, putting down deep roots, can withstand all kinds of weather. That's what ethical, wise financial decisions can do. They may not make you the richest person in the room overnight, but they'll build a solid, lasting foundation for prosperity. So let's reflect on our financial decisions. Are they short-term gains or long-term investments? Are they about instant gratification or sustainable growth? Remember, it's not just about getting rich. It's about building wealth that lasts. Success that endures is often rooted in ethical and wise decision-making. In summary, Deuteronomy 17:14-20 offers timeless wisdom on financial decision-making. This ancient text, while written in the context of selecting a king, delivers profound insights that are still relevant to our financial lives today. It emphasizes the value of humility, the dangers of greed, and the importance of ethical decision-making. Let's take a moment to recap the key points we've discussed. We began by examining the command to choose a leader that God approves of. This divine approval isn't arbitrary. It's rooted in the leader's character and values. Similarly, when we make financial decisions, Whether it's investing in a company or selecting a financial advisor, we should be guided by ethical considerations above all else. A business that profits at the expense of its employees or the environment, or an advisor driven by self-interest, isn't a wise choice. Next, we delved into the financial restrictions placed on the king. He wasn't permitted to accumulate excessive wealth, horses, or wives, things that were symbols of power and prestige in those times. Today, we might think of high-end cars, extravagant homes, or luxurious lifestyles. The underlying message is clear: materialism and greed can lead us astray. When we focus on accumulating wealth for its own sake, we risk losing sight of what truly matters. We should live within our means, avoid unnecessary debt, and remember that our worth isn't defined by our possessions. We then discussed the king's duty to write and meditate on God's law. This served as a constant reminder of his responsibilities and helped him avoid the arrogance that often comes with power. In our financial lives, we should also have a moral and ethical foundation to guide our decisions. We need to remember that we're not above the law, and that unethical practices, even if they lead to short-term gains, can have severe long-term consequences. We then applied these principles to personal finances. Humility, ethical financial practices, and avoiding greed aren't just admirable qualities, they're strategies for financial success. For instance, living within our means helps us avoid debt, while ethical investing can lead to sustainable long-term returns. We should regularly review our financial practices and ensure they align with these principles. Finally, we looked at the promise of long-lasting prosperity for those who follow these principles. Prosperity isn't just about having wealth. It's about having peace of mind, financial security, and the freedom to live according to our values. When we make ethical financial decisions, we're investing in a prosperous future for ourselves and our communities. And now, the call to action. As you go about your financial journey, remember the lessons from Deuteronomy 17:14-20. Choose wisely when investing or selecting a financial advisor. Live within your means and avoid the trap of materialism. Make ethical financial decisions, and always remember that your worth isn't defined by your wealth. With these principles in mind, you'll not only achieve financial success, you'll also make a positive impact on the world around you. So, are you ready to take the next step? Are you willing to make the commitment to ethical financial practices? The choice is yours to make. Remember, your financial decisions today have a long-term impact. Choose wisely, and prosperity will follow.